Tonight, a sad farewell to one victim of the Tucson massacre, growing hope for another. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, mass shootings and mental illness in focus. Case after case, why are warning signs ignored until it's too late? Uncle Sam says if he's picking up the tab for school lunches, he's changing the menu to make them healthier. And remembering Camelot, the Kennedy Library puts a treasure trove of history online.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. This was an especially difficult day in Tucson, a city that has gone through so much pain since last Saturday when a gunman shot 19 people, killing 6 of them. This was the day Tucson said goodbye to the youngest victim, Christina Green. But there was also good news today about Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. Doctors say she's moving both arms and legs, opening her eyes and responding to family and friends. The White House, meanwhile, released photographs of the president's visit to the hospital last night. And as for the investigation, a man walking his dog in Tucson today found a black bag holding ammunition. Authorities believe it was discarded by Jared Loeffner. But we begin with the final farewell to the young girl who captured the hearts of the nation. From Tucson tonight, here's John Blackstone.
The 9-year-old girl who was born on September 11, 2001, was carried to her funeral beneath a flag that survived the World Trade Center attack that day, a symbol of both tragedy and resilience. The service for Christina Green was private, but in death, she's become a public figure.
In Christina, we see all of our children.
At last night's tribute to the victims, the president acknowledged the special impact of Christina's death and life.
I want to live up to her expectations. I want our democracy to be as good as Christina imagined it.
While Christina has touched the nation, for the hundreds lining the route to her funeral, she is Tucson's child.
I pray every night that she'll be in a happy place and that she's with God now.
Hardest hit by the 9-year-old's death are those most like her, the children of Tucson. Classmate Alexis Strauss says Christina's friends have so many questions.
And we were just wondering, what the last words to her brother were.
Oh, that's where you signed down there. Yeah. Among the tributes at Christina's school is one from her Little League team, where she was the only girl.
We're all trying to process this.
Dave Britton brought 6 of his 7 boys. Isaac was in the 3rd grade with Christina.
And she's, in fact, the same age as me, and it's just sad.
Along with the sadness, there is also a new fear.
A little scared?
Yeah. Could have been me or any of my brothers.
Since the shooting, Kelly Forcier has been holding her 7-year-old twins, Ashley and Brianna, closer than ever.
It's sad to see that you just go to a grocery store and your kids could be killed. It's horrible.
And here at Christina Green's funeral, we've learned of yet another way this little girl has touched lives as an organ donor. Katie?
All right, John Blackstone in Tucson tonight. John, thank you. Among the mourners at Christina's funeral was astronaut Mark Kelly, the husband of Congresswoman Giffords. She remains in critical condition tonight, but her doctors and colleagues are very pleased with the progress she's making.
A few minutes after we left her room and some of her colleagues from Congress were in the room, Gabby opened her eyes for the first time.
It was a major moment in last night's emotional memorial service. And doctors say it's a major milestone for Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. Shortly before the service, surrounded by her husband, Mark Kelly, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, and her close friends, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, she opened her eyes.
She's in her hospital bed. I'm holding her hand. We're talking about how great she is and how inspiring she is. And we're talking about all the fun things we want to do. And she's squeezing my hand, and I'm knowing that she's reacting. She's moving her leg, and she's moving her arms, and we're getting so excited because we can see that she's really trying so hard to communicate with us.
Dr. Michael Lamole, the neurosurgeon who operated on Giffords, said today that that visit may have made all the difference.
I was there when she was surrounded by her friends from the Congress and Senate. And I think it was a combination, perhaps, of the unexpected but familiar that really prompted her to open her eyes and look around.
Was her husband completely beside himself?
It was dramatic. I mean, we didn't understand the importance of that. We didn't know that she had not opened her eyes. But when we watched Mark, we knew. Because he was just, Gabby, can you see me? Can you see me? And the love was so palpable. And you could just see that he was going to bring her over the finish line with his own bare hands.
Today, doctors said the development was a sign they could begin more aggressive physical therapy on Giffords. They held her up in bed and dangled her feet over the side, and when asked, she moved both legs on command. But her attempt to focus her open eyes has been the most encouraging development yet.
It's like before in the morning when you get up for work and you're about to have your cup of coffee, she's arousing, then the eyes stays open for long periods of time. And then if you were to put stimulation in front of her, you can tell that she can see.
Giffords remains in critical condition, and as their doctors have reported, recovery will be measured not in days or hours, but in months. Still, to the friends and family members who thought they'd never see her again, her progress is nothing short of miraculous.
So miracles happen every day, and in medicine we like to very much attribute them to either what we do or others do around us, but a lot of medicine is outside of our control, and we're wise to acknowledge miracles.
What is the first thing you'd like to do with Gabby when she's well enough?
Hug her. I just want to hug her.
There are few tasks as difficult or as important as comforting a family that has suffered a loss. When it's the American family, the task falls to the president. And President Obama is being praised widely today for the words he used to ease the pain of Tucson and the entire nation. Our chief White House correspondent Chip Reid now has that story.
For the grieving people of Tucson, the president brought words of comfort and consolation.
The hopes of a nation are here tonight. We mourn with you for the fallen.
His soaring, heartfelt words brought many listeners to tears, as when he spoke of 9-year-old victim Christina Green.
If there are rain puddles in heaven, Christina is jumping in them today.
This from a president who during some previous crises, such as the Gulf oil disaster and the attempted Christmas Day bombing, was criticized by some for being detached and slow to lead. This time was different. The speech was the culmination of an intensive 5-day effort that began immediately after the shooting to bring the nation together.
Rather than pointing fingers or assigning blame, let's use this occasion to expand our moral imaginations, to listen to each other more carefully.
I actually thought it was the best speech I've ever heard him give.
Even some of the president's toughest Republican critics hailed the speech.
I thought he did a really nice job of bringing the country together. I was very proud of the job he did, yeah.
I thought he touched a chord with what America was feeling, and we want the healing to begin.
And it wasn't just the president who touched a chord. So did Republican Speaker of the House John Boehner, who also earned praise from both sides of the aisle for his focus on unity.
This is a time for the House to lock arms in prayer for the fallen and the wounded, and a resolve to carry on a dialogue of democracy.
The big question now is, how long will this feeling of unity last? Well, the first big test is next week, when Republicans in the House plan to vote on repealing health care reform. Katie?
Chip Reid. Chip, thanks very much. On the issue of unity, Democratic Senator Mark Udall of Colorado is proposing that Democrats sit next to Republicans at the State of the Union address on January 25th instead of in two separate sections. Tonight, at least 3 other senators, all Democrats, say they're in favor of it. The tragedy in Tucson has many asking a familiar question. Did warning signs go ignored? In this country, 45 million adults are diagnosed as mentally ill. 11 million of those cases are considered serious. But all too often, people who need psychiatric help don't get it. They fall through the cracks. And tonight, we put that issue in focus.
Oftentimes when we have tragedies like this, people will say there were no warning signs.
He shot at people, and Gabrielle Giffords was shot.
Well, in the case of Jared Lee Loughner, there were plenty of warning signs. Loeffner would laugh to himself at inappropriate times. He would clench his fists and make faces just out of nowhere.
It's still unclear how big a role mental illness played in Jared Loeffner's shooting rampage.
When you look back on it now, you say, oh, he was disturbed, he was unbalanced. Were you trying to be nice to him in case he shot people?
Yes.
But there's a big leap from a guy in your class who you find creepy to a guy who shows up and just starts killing people indiscriminately.
When he showed up on Saturday with a semi-automatic pistol and an extended clip, that was the first time that the public had a chance to do anything about the threat, and at that point it was really too late.
The Tucson shooting is the latest tragedy linked to a gunman believed to be mentally ill.
Gunmen started shooting at people.
Colin Ferguson killed 6 commuters on a New York train. Russell Weston killed 2 at the U.S. Capitol. And Sun-Wee Cho murdered 32 people at Virginia Tech.
You're seeing police out with their weapons drawn.
The 2 cases are hauntingly parallel. Cho was a chilling character. When you saw the pictures at Virginia Tech where he's posing with the guns, I had the same kind of flashback to that when I saw the mugshot of Jared Lee Loeffner. Their actions can't be defended in any way, but you have to ask the question, was enough done ahead of time to try to short-circuit that danger and to help the individual? And in Loeffner's case, the answer seems to be no.
In retrospect, it's easy to connect the dots. If anyone could have put those all together, it would have been very clear what should have happened.
Jared Loeffner slipped through the cracks in a society and health system that still fails to help people with serious mental illness. Nearly half of those who should be treated are not.
The public should be concerned about what a poor job we are doing to treat these people, and that what we're looking at in Arizona is simply one of the consequences.
For every 100 American adults, 20 have some form of mental illness. 5 have disorders classified as severe. They rarely pose a danger, but those odds increase without proper treatment.
I am the mother of an adult young man who's been diagnosed with a schizoaffective disorder. Because he was an adult, the only way he could have gotten treatment is if the police came and took him away in handcuffs. And that was it.
Privacy issues, access to treatment, and the stigma of mental illness are major barriers for families and friends looking to intervene.
They're afraid to report somebody because they're afraid that it'll ruin their lives. And also there's some fear. Maybe the person's going to come back and do something to them.
25 states will not allow a person to be involuntarily committed unless he or she is in obvious danger or basic needs are not being met.
The disease itself carries with it a lack of insight and denial. So people say, well, I'm perfectly fine, I'm not going to get help. That's part of the disease. If you have high blood pressure and I say you have high blood pressure, you need to take this pill, you're going to probably do it. But if you have schizophrenia, you may say, what do you mean, I'm perfectly fine?
Privacy laws can also conceal patterns of alarming behavior.
Personal rights are very important. We protect people's civil liberties in this country, but we protect them so well that for many of these people who are severely mentally ill and don't know they're mentally ill, we're simply protecting their right to be homeless and on the streets or in jail. We're protecting the right to continue to be sick.
Some states actually protect mental health records even more aggressively than records involving someone's physical health. And the reason for that is that we want to encourage people to seek treatment without being afraid that that's going to be used against them or disclosed to authorities at some point.
Mental health funding has been declining for decades. Since 2009, states have cut more than $2 billion for mental health from their budgets.
Each single part of the way where we fail somebody, we're all responsible. I think we fail people with mental illness. We give up on them because it's just too hard.
Here we go, more students.
I've gone through Columbine. I went through the Virginia Tech. I've gone through some horrible, horrible shootings. No, I'm never shocked anymore.
Congresswoman Carolyn McCarthy's husband was killed when he was shot on the Long Island Railroad by Colin Ferguson, who was paranoid and delusional.
He just started shooting, and my husband was shot in the head. He died instantly.
Now another man who appears to be mentally ill has gunned down her colleague.
You sit there and go, why? Why?
There's a growing movement to compel the mentally ill to get treatment. In New York, family members can petition the court to force a patient to take medication. But doctors and mental health advocates worry change won't come fast enough to prevent the next tragedy.
Right now, we need to have a much better system in the United States of sounding the alarm.
And until that happens, you're going to continue to see these, I guarantee you. And in fact, if anything, they're increasing in frequency.
Research shows that with proper treatment and medication, people who have severe mental illness are no more likely to commit crimes than those who do not. And still ahead here on the CBS Evening News, he got only B's and C's in government but managed to become president. The JFK archives go online. But up next, how the government wants to change the menu for school lunches. When it comes to our schools, class size is one issue. The size of the kids in the class, quite another. 1/3 of school-age children are overweight or obese. So today, Michelle Miller reports the government called for big changes in federally funded school lunches.
Stuffed pizza bread and a bagel.
In the losing fight against childhood obesity, the federal government wants to enlist the lunch ladies in the battle.
Thank you, Carlos.
And we know there's too much sodium and too much saturated fat, and this is a way of responding to those concerns.
The USDA's proposed guidelines will for the first time limit calories according to age group, decrease servings of starchy vegetables, and cut sodium levels in half. It doubles fruit and vegetable servings and requires 50% of all breads and cereals be whole grain. So instead of hot dogs on a bun with raw veggies, whole wheat pasta with meat sauce, a whole wheat roll, and 3 cooked vegetables.
Why are these string beans just sitting there on the plate?
Because I eat them last.
Oh, really?
Will kids fall in line?
The vegetables, nobody really eats them.
But it's possible. The Cambridge, Massachusetts school district changed its meal plan, and in 3 years, 40% of overweight kids dropped to a healthy weight.
They eat better, they're healthier, they're more alert, they're more awake.
All across the country, 32 million students eat school lunches 5 days a week. 11 million eat breakfast too. The challenge? Making those healthier meals affordable. Will this increase the cost?
I would think it would, because you're talking about fresh foods, therefore they have less of a shelf life.
Yummy! But with kids consuming half of their daily calories at school, supporters say the cost, whatever it may be, is worth it. Michelle Miller, CBS News, Hackensack, New Jersey.
Devastating floods are making headlines tonight in 2 different parts of the world. In Brazil, a woman made a desperate leap into rushing waters with one hand on a rescue rope, the other clutching her dog. Neighbors pulled her to safety. The dog was lost. More than 470 people have died in the flooding north of Rio. But there was reason to celebrate when a man and his infant son were pulled from the ruins of their home. Meanwhile, in Australia, floodwaters receded today in Brisbane, but not before 30,000 homes and businesses were damaged. At least 15 people have died in the region, including 13-year-old Jordan Rice. He was swept away after he convinced rescuers to take his younger brother first. Coming up next, you've heard his famous speech. Now you can read an historic early draft online. Shortly after President Kennedy took office 50 years ago next week, he said technology would one day make records of his administration widely accessible. Now, Wyatt Andrews reports the technology has caught up, and that day is here.
You, John Fitzgerald.
Perhaps more than any president before him.
The torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans.
John Kennedy connected with younger Americans, which is why his presidential library is now putting everything possible online. Hundreds of thousands of photographs, documents, even the president's doodling.
We will be able to give today's generation access to the historical record and challenge them to answer my father's call to service.
So anyone researching Kennedy's most famous call to service,
ask not,
can learn that "Ask not what your country can do for you" was handwritten in barely legible scrawl. His challenge to go to the moon was neatly typed and underlined.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Kennedy's Camelot moments are all there in photographs, and there's film of an upbeat president joking that he won't put his library in Washington.
Yes, I'm going to put it in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
But the deadly serious Cuban Missile Crisis is captured moment to moment in dozens of online recordings. As the U.S. and Soviets threaten nuclear war over Russian missiles in Cuba, JFK asked former President Dwight Eisenhower how far he should go.
What's your judgment as to the chances they'll fire these things off if we invade Cuba?
I don't believe it will.
You don't think they will?
It's the kind of material historians used to spend months tracking down, all now available with a click.
You're going to have a lot more people looking and thinking and probing into our presidential past.
You won't find everything about Kennedy's past. The Marilyn birthday video isn't there. But struggling students might be inspired by Kennedy's report cards. It seems the man who hand-wrote that soaring rhetoric as president had improved over the C he got in English as a sophomore at Harvard. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, Washington.
And that's the CBS Evening News. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. Good night.